Hi, I'm Tom from Tom Migot Photography. There is one important rule in photography is being aware of your background because the background can definitely ruin an image. And today I'm going to show you how sometimes you can use Photoshop in post-production to salvage your image and correct that background. So to illustrate my point, I'm actually going to use this image that was sent to me during a photo review that I've done a few weeks ago. And the image isn't bad per se. There's a lot of things we could say about it. But what really struck me is what we have in the background of this image, especially the rock. We've got this rock right behind the bird here. And the tone of the rock, which is kind of a dark, muddy brown, matches the feathers that we have here on the top. And I just feel like, especially, it just diminish our subject. And especially when you actually look at the preview here in the navigator at the top left corner, I find that sometimes looking at the image far away, you can really see whether your subject, whether the light, the tones are actually where they need to be. And when you look at this image very in a small fashion, you realize that actually the rock is way too big. It's really much present in the scene, and that ruin the image. So I'm going to show you how in Photoshop we can easily remove this rock and really reveal a subject back into the photograph. So to do this, I'm going to do a right click from Lightroom and I'm just going to do edit in Photoshop CC 2017. It's going to here I'm just going to select edit to copy with Lightroom adjustment, although I haven't done any adjustment inside Lightroom, but it's just in case if I were to save it in Photoshop, it would not overwrite this image because this is a JPEG. So bear in mind as well, this is a JPEG and therefore it doesn't have all the latitude that I could actually have with a raw file. So here we are in Photoshop, and you know, there are different ways of doing things in Photoshop. I'm not saying this is the only way to achieve this. This is just one off. And the first step, like any project in Photoshop, is to actually duplicate our background layer. So to do that, I'm just going to take the background layer, drag it to the icon here, and now we've got a new copy. In fact, I'm actually going to rename this copy and let's call it correction. So what I want to show you today is I'm actually going to use a selection tool because I find that the selection tool is, we tend to forget about it, and it's such a powerful way to transform our image within the constraint that we wish. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select the ideal selection tool, and we have so many versions of the selection tool, but we're going to use the quick selection tool that is right here. No, sorry, just underneath here. If you don't know anything about the quick selection tool, I invite you to click on the link up here. I've done a tutorial, I think a couple of years ago, about all the selection tools in Photoshop. So that one will help you understand how this tool works. But basically, it's a tool based on contrast. So it looks at the pixels around and use the contrast to add pixels and areas into your selection. And here we have a fairly contrasted image. If you look at the tail of the bird against the bright background, and even when we have the rock here, there's muddy brown, then we have the white feather of the bird that basically creates our contrast. So all I need to do is basically increase the cursor size, and I just need to click on the image, and you see Photoshop is doing a really good job at selecting part of the image that I want. So let's go here and select a part of the white body as well, like so. I think that's pretty good. Now what I want to do is I'm actually going to zoom in to make sure that Photoshop really selected everything that I wanted. And here you can see on the edge, we can just add this edge to our selection. We could do, I think that's pretty good like this. We could add as well here. I'm not going to do the entire bird. It doesn't matter because I'm not, oh, it went a little bit too much here. So let's do Alt or Option and remove that part in between the legs. So here we go. That I don't want it in the selection. And I think that's pretty good. Let's carry on and follow the contour. Then I'm just going to add this part as well. That should have been. And let's see, here on the left, we could add a little bit more. Here as well, just a tiny bit more, like so. And the white on the edge, like this. I'm not bothered about the little cut here. That's absolutely fine for this tutorial. We could increase a little bit the tail, a tiny bit more. And I think that will be it for this tutorial. So, as you may know, now that we have a selection, if I was to apply any change to the image, it would basically apply it only within that selection. But the trick is, what if now I actually inverse that selection? It would mean that I would select everything in the image except that particular spot, which means that I could modify everything in the image without affecting that part. So let's do this. To inverse your selection, you can simply go to the select menu and doing inverse, or you can do, as you can see, Shift Command I or Shift Control I on the PC. So let's do this. And now you notice that we have the marching ants on the edge of the image, and that tells us that basically everything has been selected except that part of the bird's body, which means that once again, if I am to modify something, it will not affect the bird. And to remove that rock, what I want to use is the clone stamp tool. So to do that, I'm just going to select the clone stamp tool like this. I am going to check that the tool is going to be using a soft brush. So to do that, I'm going to use Control and Alt or Control Option on the Mac, and I'm going to click. If I'm going up, it goes to 0. If I'm going down, it increases the hardness. So I'm on 0, and then I can change the diameter that I wish to use. I think that's here, that's absolutely fine. So now that I have this, I'm just going to click on the source of my clone. So Alt, and I'm going to click right here. I think that's absolutely fine. And now I'm going to go and paint over. And you notice I'm going over the bird, but nothing changes on the bird. So I'm just going up like this and removing that rock. I think that's pretty good. But then we have some parts here that are half modified. So let's take a reading and then just quickly go like this. We have some smudge here that comes from here. So let's just take another reading, correct a little bit that way. Remove this, and I'm just taking a few sample reading a little bit everywhere in the image, just to make sure that I don't have too much evident or obvious clone in the image. So I think that's absolutely fine. I could change the flow as well a little bit, like so, and I think that's actually pretty decent. So now that we have this, I can do Control Command D to deselect everything. So if we compare that correction layer to what we have at the beginning, you say, I like to think that now it is much better. The subject is being revealed in the image. So that's great. But another thing that I find is that this image is a little bit too, it was framed too tightly, and I'd like to have a little bit more space above the bird right here. And so to do that, I actually would like to make the image a little bit bigger. There's different ways of doing it, but in Photoshop CC 2017, I'd like to use the crop tool. So I'm going to select the crop tool like this, and I'm going to remove here, it seems to be a preset of 16:9. So I'm just going to clear this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move like so. And okay, so that is the image that we have now. We need to select this option here. That's going to enable us to increase the size of the crop and fill that new space with the content aware. If you don't know this feature, I've covered that a couple of months ago in a tutorial, and here is the link. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to click and go above like this. I think somewhere here should give us a good result, I think. And I'm just going to press enter. And I'm going to let it do its formula. And it should actually do something rather interesting. Okay, so it did a pretty good job, as you can see, except here in that part, which is not a problem at all. So now we're actually going to back to the clone tool, selecting our correction layer here, and let's take a reading. Let's take a reading of over here, and basically, I think doing this, and it's good that we still have the flow at 70. Take another reading here, like so, and that is actually not bad at all. Right, so if we are to save this image, let's save this image. So Shift Command S, and let's save it here. And I'm not going to call it original. I'm going to call it correction. Okay, I'm going to keep it as a TIFF for now. Not that it actually matters much, but I'm just going to click as a TIFF, and I'm going to go back to Lightroom. So I'm just waiting for it to save fully. Okay, so let's go to Lightroom now, and we have our image. So the correction image, do I still have it? I want to make sure. Original. Oh, correction. Okay, so that's our new image, and if we compare it to the original, which is here, let's do this. So I hope you agree with me that the picture on the left is better than the picture on the right. We now have the subject. It is much better. We could even go a little bit further. Let's go in the develop module inside Lightroom now. And just going to turn the light on. Come on. One more. Okay. One thing that we could actually do is we could actually make sure that the picture is better aligned. So we could try auto. I'm not sure if it's actually doing a pretty decent job now with this. And we could reduce slightly the bottom like this. And I think that's actually not bad at all. Let's see what we get. So that's pretty good, right? Let's compare again those two. And I reckon that the one on the left is better than the one on the right. So let me know in a comment what you think about retouching the background like this. And please be aware of your background the next time you take a photograph, because you might not be able to apply this technique every single time. Until next time, this is Tom Migot saying, if you like it, well, capture it. Cheers.